amazing financial aid session. I know everyone's starting to tune in. Really appreciate you jumping on this evening, depending on where you are from. We will get started in just a few moments, but we're so happy that you decided to join us on this amazing session, working with financial aid and understanding the process. We'll just wait a couple moments. We know that some of you might be driving home from work, cooking dinner, maybe just excited to have this wonderful show for you this evening. We are happy that you tuned in on your busy day. Awesome. And so start to think of your questions. You can feel free to send them directly to me. You can send them to Griffin. He's right there. His name is Griffin Chalice Financial Aid on the Zoom. You can send it directly to him or to me if you have any questions about financial aid throughout this presentation. And we will get started in just a few. I know a couple families are tuning in and trying to rush to their computers or the devices. So give it one more minute and we will get started.
Holy cow, Uncle Jeff is a real person.
How's it, Randy?
We heard all about Uncle Jeff.
Oh, I hope it's all good, Randy.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, whoever's saying it, I should pay them. Mahalo.
Wow, Uncle. I love it. Randy, we're super excited that you're here joining us. And you know what? Since we want to make sure, thank you, Gracie, for sending the message to the whole crew today about sending your questions in to us. You can send it to Griffin Chalice, our financial aid counselor. You can send them directly to me, and you can send them privately so that people don't see your question and I will say them out loud anonymously. But we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Donna Ramos Barsana. I'm one of the admissions counselors here at Pacific University, and we have a really great evening for you planned with a very important topic. We know that deciding on a college a lot of times will depend on the cost of attendance or that process. So we want to make things as simple and as easy for you and your family to make this very important decision. We wanted to take the time in our evening to share with all of you some of the important steps with financial aid. And we have some of our admissions counselors here. They all have their Zoom videos on. So go ahead and give a wave, team. Many of you know who they are. They are your amazing admissions counselors here to support you too. So if you feel more comfortable sending them a message about financial aid questions, go ahead and do that and we'll make sure you are taken care of. But yeah, ooh, thank you. Yep, we got some virtual clapping. I love it. I love it. So, we just want to go ahead and say a big thank you to Griffin. He is here spending time with us. He's one of our amazing financial aid counselors who really, truly tries to make families feel really comfortable about this overwhelming process. So we just want to thank Griffin for being here and to share some couple next steps for you and your family now that your student has been admitted to Pacific. So Griffin Chalice, take it away.
Alrighty, thank you, Donna. And yeah, I just want to, reiterate the sentiment Donna was saying. You've got an amazing group of admissions folks here to support you. So know that they're here to answer all your questions and get you help as well as you continue through the process. And tonight, what we're going to do is go through some general financial aid information, kind of looking at the process in regards to financial aid and where we take it from here, right? So like Donna said, financial aid can be a lot, right? It can be a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of different steps in financial aid. Even before you start talking about the beast that is the FAFSA, right? There's a whole slew of terminology and different things that come into play when students start looking at financial aid and going throughout the process. And really my biggest thing is just knowing that you all have folks here at Pacific who are a resource to guide you through the whole process, right? To help make it so that it is not something that's super overwhelming, but something that you can break down into little understandable chunks and have someone at Pacific who is a go-to contact for financial aid. And so tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the financial aid office here at Pacific. So our structure, what it looks like, how to get in touch with us. We'll go through the financial aid timeline and process here at Pacific University. So talk a little bit about kind of where we're at right now, some things to expect as we move forward through the coming months. We'll talk a little bit about what your financial aid is going to look like once you do get that information from our office and the different components that make up that financial aid package. And then lastly, I want to touch on some financial aid opportunities that exist both within the Pacific ecosystem and things that exist outside of Pacific as well. And then I know at the end, I want to leave a good chunk of time to get a Q&A and answer any general questions that folks have and leave contact information for folks who have maybe some more specific things that they like to get into, or set up a follow-up Zoom call if that's necessary as well. So starting us off here, just want to go through some general information for our office. So we are located on the first floor of Marsh Hall. That's this building right behind me. You've probably seen it if you've gone campus or really looked at any of Pacific's promotional materials online. We like to highlight Marsh Hall quite a bit. We are there Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Every single student at Pacific and our undergraduate programs has a assigned financial aid counselor who is their go-to one-on-one contact, not only when they're in your shoes, but their entire time they're at Pacific. So the way we break that down is I work with students' last names A through L, and then Stacy England in our office, who I've pictured here, who's fantastic, works with students with last names M through Z. You can also reach out to our general financial aid email, just at financialaid@pacificu.edu, or you can call our office at this line I've shown here. And again, of course, you can always get in touch with Stacy and I individually as well. You're always free to drop by the financial aid office, call us, email us. You don't need an appointment to drop by. Folks are welcome to set up appointments, but the nice thing about the size of our institution and financial aid office is that when you drop by, there will pretty much always be someone there who can sit down with you and talk through your financial aid and any questions that you have. One other thing I promise folks is that you will hear back from us. And I know our admissions counselors can attest to this. When you reach out to financial aid, it's not going into the void or a dark pit, right? You are going to hear back from both myself and Stacy with whatever your questions or concerns are, and make sure that we get you the info that you need. And like I said, just want to show our two counselors here. Stacy's fantastic, and then I'm all right as well too. So yeah, just know that these are your contact points for financial aid when you're working with us throughout your time as a student at Pacific. Talking a little bit about the timeline for financial aid, and I like to show this idea of a specific financial aid timeline just because it can exist differently than the general admissions timeline. And there are a couple other touch points that we really make sure folks have on their radar and keep in mind as well. And so really fall and winter. So this past fall and winter is when that FAFSA opens up, or the free application for federal student aid. And then it's also going to be when scholarship applications tend to open up, both institutionally and then things that exist kind of at the national and state or even federal level as well. And then it's also, of course, the time that you start through the admissions process with admissions folks here at Pacific as well. And then moving into fall and winter, this is where we are at right now, right? So, and I like to highlight this just to show that we're still a good ways into the process, right? We're almost halfway as we come up to right now. So there's still a whole lot of steps in regards to financial aid that are gonna occur here moving forward. And we'll talk about what those are during our time here tonight. So winter and spring really is the time to make sure that FAFSA is completed. And then you're going to start to receive official financial aid packages from Pacific University. And our office has actually started building these now. So these are in the works currently with the goal to get them started sending out middle of this month. So folks are going to start getting those official financial aid packages from Pacific here in February as well. Then it's also when we tend to hit scholarship application deadlines as well. So for example, the Pacific scholarships that I'm going to talk about later on all have a March 1st deadline of this year. So that's when our scholarship applications are going to start being due. Moving on through spring and summer is when students will go through and complete what's called their financial aid checklist, which is the online component of a student's financial aid here at Pacific University. And then again, throughout the summer, we're also going to run into a couple more scholarship deadlines specifically for things that exist outside of the Pacific ecosystem. Then finally, summer and fall is really the time to finalize any questions folks have, finalize any additional loan info folks are pulling from other resources, and then of course, start classes in the fall and be a student at Pacific University. Touched a little bit on the FAFSA, or the free application for federal student aid. And of course, that is what Pacific uses to determine eligibility for not only need-based federal aid, but also for other aid here at Pacific University as well. So definitely encourage folks to get this FAFSA in as soon as possible if you've started and have not completed it yet. filing the FAFSA as soon as possible will make sure that you are a part of that first batch of official financial aid awards that we send out to students this month. So make sure you're getting that FAFSA in as soon as you can. If folks are running into issues and snags, I know the form is functioning a lot better than it did last year for folks who heard horror stories about last year's FAFSA rollout, but there are still a couple issues that I know I've had families and students running into. So if you're running into any of those things and you need some assistance, reach out to me, reach out to Stacy. We can help point you in the right direction. But like I said, at this point, wanted to make sure folks get that submitted as soon as you can so that we can ensure we get an actual financial aid package in your hands as soon as possible. Moving on to talk about that financial aid package and what that's going to look like. So once our office starts sending out these notices, students, you're going to get two things. You're going to get an actual physical piece that will be mailed to the address we have on file for you. And then you're also going to get a digital notice sent to your Pacific University email address. That physical piece is going to contain an actual paper copy of your financial aid letter. And then also we'll have a pamphlet with some other information that'll be important as well on there. The digital notice is going to have instructions, again, for viewing that financial aid information online through your financial aid checklist, which is where you're going to be really interacting with your financial aid during your time as a student. It exists in what's called our Boxer online self-service system, which is really where students interact with that information. And there's a whole bunch of other things outside of financial aid that you're going to be familiar with in that system as well as you continue throughout. Talking about that digital piece, like I said, this is where folks are going to go through and it'll ask you to accept or decline every single piece of financial aid that was offered to the student. Then folks are going to digitally sign that financial aid offer letter. And this is what finalizes all of a student's financial aid to actually be posted to their student account when the fall semester starts in August. It's also where folks will be able to find if there are any documentation or required docs that our office needs to finalize financial aid eligibility. So sometimes what happens is whether we get a FAFSA on our side that we need to confirm info for, if there's any info on that FAFSA that's missing, sometimes we reach out to students and families to ask for additional information, and it will tell you exactly what that info is, how you can get it, and why we're asking for it in that online financial aid portal as well. And then finally, that's where folks can report any outside scholarships. So once students are in that financial aid self-service portal, there'll be an option to report any outside scholarship resources that students are receiving. And then once we see that on our end, we can add those resources to a student's financial aid package in the portal so that students are seeing a holistic view of all of the financial aid that they're getting, which includes outside resources potentially as well. Next, moving on to what's going to happen with the actual physical piece. So this is a general idea of what the actual financial aid offer letter is going to look like. Don't worry, I'm going to zoom in on a couple pieces of this so we can kind of break it down together. This is the most important bit, right? So this is what you're going to want to make sure you really look at once you get this financial aid notice. It's going to have information for our estimated cost of attendance for the year. It's going to have information for the financial aid and scholarships that folks are eligible for as well. And it's just going to be a whole bunch of info to take note of as you look at this financial aid offer as well. Like I said, there's also going to be a smaller trifold in there that has important information on things like next steps. It'll have information for actually getting into that online portal for folks who haven't done so. And then it's also going to have a couple other important information as well, just to take note of too. As you look at this physical piece, a couple things to note. First, at the top there, that is going to have student's name and then also the student ID. And this is really helpful because sometimes what happens is when I'm working with incoming students, they don't know what their student ID is yet. If you still don't know, once you get this financial aid offer letter, don't worry, you'll be able to see it right up there on the top of the screen. And then what it's going to do is it's going to break down Pacific's cost of attendance. And a couple of things to note, right? The two biggest things on this page, and these are the biggest things that I always like to highlight for folks. It's going to be broken out into direct costs and also indirect costs. And so the difference between these two are direct costs are things that are actually going to show up on a billing statement from Pacific University before financial aid is applied, right? So these are going to be things like tuition and fees for folks who are living on campus, housing and meals as well, potentially. Then down below are indirect costs, which are pieces of what makes up a student's cost of attendance, but that are not actually billed by an institution. And so every institution has a cost of attendance where they'll have budgeted indirect costs. And these includes things like books and supplies, transportation, miscellaneous expenses, and then potentially student loan fees for folks who are going to be borrowing as well. Folks who decline those loans, those pieces will come off that estimated cost of attendance as well. When we move on down the financial aid offer letter, it's going to break all of the financial aid that folks are eligible for down. And what it's going to do is you'll see here, first, it'll show all of the scholarships and grants that students are eligible for, right? And it tells us that this is financial aid that does not ever have to be paid back. So it'll break down every single piece of scholarship, whether it is a federal grant or whether it's a Pacific grant, that Pacific academic scholarship, senior preview day potentially too, right? Those are all going to be on there. And then at the bottom of this box, it'll show the estimated cost minus all of those just scholarships and grants. And then moving down the offer letter, it'll show any loan eligibility that students have, right, through the federal government. So this is either going to be all in federal direct unsubsidized loan or potentially in federal direct unsubsidized and the federal direct subsidized loan. Then at the very bottom there, it's going to show, again, the estimated costs minus all of the financial aid, including those federal loan options as well. So just know when you're looking at those different estimated cost pieces, one is going to include just scholarships and grants, and the other includes every single piece of financial aid that's been offered as well. When you're looking at those financial aid packages, there are a couple different components that folks are going to see on there. So things that are merit scholarships are going to renew automatically as long as folks are maintaining 2.0 GPA and completing at least 67% of their attempted credits a semester. So for example, if folks are enrolled in 12 credits, that'd be completing at least 8 of those 12 credits. These scholarships are going to be things like that Pacific Academic Scholarship, potentially Senior Preview Day Scholarship, or any talent awards that folks might be applying for that I'll touch a little bit later on. Next, need-based grants. So whether those be things like that federal Pell Grant, potentially a Pacific grant, federal student loan options, and then work study as well. These are going to renew as long as folks, again, complete that 67% of attempted credits at a 2.0 GPA and are filing that FAFSA every single year. So just make sure that as folks get these financial aid packages, these are going to be the kind of things you're going to see on there, and just having this in mind when you're looking at what the renewal criteria are for those awards as well. Thankfully, when you're actually in the online system, if you click, there's a little question mark that's circled by every single piece of financial aid. If you click on that, it will actually show you what the individual renewal requirements are for every single piece of financial aid. So I always, and this isn't just a Pacific rule, this is just when you're looking at financial aid packages across the board, I always recommend folks go through, find out what's going to renew for how many years versus what potentially is going to renew for 1 or 2 years, or what's not going to renew at all, right? Just so you know, since you're planning for 4 years, right, what financial aid is going to be with you the entire time that you're a student at whatever institution, right? So here at Pacific, though, pretty much all your stuff is going to renew for 4 years as long as you're staying on top of completing your credits and your grades as well. So important info to know as you continue throughout your time as a student. Moving to touch a little bit on some scholarship opportunities that exist here at Pacific University. And so, like I said, we do have talent awards where we partner with our different departments on campus to offer scholarships through their individual departments, right? And so we have scholarships with music, dance, theater, we have a creative writing scholarship, computer science, there is a art scholarship as well. And with this is where students can complete these applications online at our website linked here. And then again, it's a really good way to connect with those departments before you even arrive here on campus, right? So the financial aid office handles the intake of these scholarships and disperses them out to our departments to review. But it's not me sitting down and looking at your actual application and materials. It is actual faculty in our music, our theater department, our dance department, and who are looking at your information and determining those awards. So it's really a good way to get connected with those folks. And even if you don't get a scholarship your first year, potentially, it's a really good way to just have your foot in the door and a through line through to a department that you're potentially wanting to get involved with as well. So these are, again, open November 1st. They close March 1st. So they've been open for a little bit now. Folks have about a little under a month to apply to them. I will say this is insider information. March 1st is a Saturday this year. I won't close the applications until I'm back in the office on Monday, probably. So you've got a couple extra days to get the applications in, but try to have them done by March 1st, just as a general rule. And then once you complete those applications, we send those off to our departments. And I always tell folks too, our departments don't start reviewing until applications close. So if you haven't applied yet, don't think that you're at any sort of disadvantage or that you're less likely to get the scholarship, because our departments don't look at anything until all of the apps are through. So if you apply on March 1st or February 28th, you don't have a lesser chance of getting that scholarship. It's all based on your materials and the strength of your application. So definitely get an application in for those if you are interested as well. Moving on to talk a little bit about outside scholarships. And I know this sometimes is where the search can get tricky and frustrating for folks just because there is so much stuff out there, right? Doing a Google search for scholarships is horrifying and brings up a ton of different stuff. And it's hard to know what to sift through, what's legit, what's junk. This list here, it's a compiled list of things that I have had students at Pacific find a good amount of success with in the past. And after this presentation is done, I'm actually going to pop into the Zoom chat and post all these links, just so you have it. You'll have this presentation as well, but I just want to make sure I can get you these links as soon as possible. So these are all free. Please, that's another thing about outside scholarships. Don't ever pay for a search engine or pay for someone to look for scholarships for you. There are amazing resources that are out there that are free and don't cost any additional funds at all. Most of them will have you create some sort of profile with them so that they can match you to individual scholarships. But there's not going to be any sort of additional fee to apply for any of these resources. And little shout out, this last one, Kaleidoscope. This is one that I hadn't heard of until this past fall. I had a student who came by my office who just wanted to tell me how awesome this resource that they were using was. And I've started sharing it with students, and students have gotten a good amount of stuff through it. It matches them based on date availability. So we'll only show students things that are actually still open to be applied for the next academic year. So it's a lot less manual sifting through past year's information. So check these resources out. If you're having trouble with the outside scholarship search, there are two places that I always encourage folks to check. The first is a high school counselor. Usually high school counselors or college counselors at schools have a really good curated list of local scholarships that they've had students find success with in the past, right? And those are always going to be the best to apply to, those local scholarships, just because the applicant pool is smaller and you'll have a higher likelihood of success in getting those scholarships as well. The next is to get in touch with me, right? Or Stacy. Sometimes what we do is we sit down with the student. I take a list of all your interests, whether they are academic or things that are interests outside of the classroom, and then take a couple minutes to do some digging on my end. I always tell students, if you like something, I can almost guarantee you there's someone out there who wants to give you money for it, right? So definitely get in touch as you're looking through these outside scholarships, and just stay connected with Stacy and myself if you need any additional assistance as well. One of the last bits of information that I want to close on is talking about special circumstances, right? And what we can do when there is a disconnect between potentially FAFSA information versus what the actual situation that folks are in is. And I always tell students and families, as someone who looks at a lot of FAFSAs, it asks for a lot of information, but there is also a lot of information that the FAFSA doesn't care to ask for, right? And there are aspects of students and families' financial situations that we could never be privy to from a FAFSA form. And those are the kind of things that we really want to make sure we take into account. And so, for example, the biggest and most easiest one is tax information, right? So the FAFSA for this year is pulling tax info from 2 years prior, so 2023. If there has been job change in income level, change in job status, or change in benefits, these are the kind of things that we can potentially factor in to make actual changes on that FAFSA form once we're able to get in and actually make edits. So what we're able to do is use up-to-date information to get into that FAFSA and make changes on our side so that students and families don't have to get into the system and mess with it at all anymore. We can collect documentation and make those changes on our side. But even outside of income changes, right? Things like medical expenses that have piled up over the past couple of years. If folks have younger siblings who are in private school. These are kind of things that we can take into account. So please, if there's anything at all that you want me or Stacey to consider as we are working on financial aid packages and making financial aid considerations on our end, please, 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 please reach out. And if you aren't sure if it's something we could consider, please reach out and ask, right? Worst we can say is no. And best we could do is offer some potentially additional financial aid or make changes to the FAFSA. So stay connected with us if there's anything at all that you'd like to chat with us about. The best way to initiate that conversation is typically an email to Stacey or myself. And then if we need more information or need to follow up with any questions, we'll send you a follow-up, and then we can send through a secure document upload from our office to where folks can start submitting that information, and we can start looking at that on our side. So please, if there's anything at all that you want our office to be aware of as we kind of go through and move into the portion of the process where you're really working with me and working with Stacey to whittle away at that and just build that financial aid package more, reach out, right? Reach out and let us see what we can do, and really let us fight for you on our end, right? That at the end of the day is what our role is, right? That is what we're all here for you, whether we're financial aid counselors or admissions counselors. Our job is to make Pacific home, right? And do that through any means that we can. So contact us. Again, want to leave this as my last slide. Like I said, financial aid can be a lot. There's a lot of uncertainties. There's a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of things that are changing from year to year, right? It's all based federally. So things that exist one year potentially can change next year. So please stay in touch with us if you've got questions that come up. If the whole process is feeling overwhelming, stay connected with me and Stacey. We're always happy to have conversations, just to kind of, help recenter folks and help us see what we can do to get you here and to make Pacific work. So again, Marsh Hall, this is where our office is. General email, general phone number, but also please feel free to stay connected to Stacey and myself, and I'll put our emails here in chat just so you have it. But again, like I said, I wanted to make sure we hit questions if folks have them. I know financial aid is a big topic where questions can come up. So I'll turn it back over to Donna. I don't know if you have any general housekeeping before we open it up to any questions, but thank you again for letting me sit here and ramble about financial aid during your evening or during your right after work. So always appreciate y'all listening to me talk about my stuff. So
Thank you so much, Griffin. I mean, every time I hear his presentation, I always feel like there's more clarity and more understanding, and just a helpful face to a very, very overwhelming process. So thank you so much, Griffin, for your insight and your big heart to help our families. It really means a lot to all of us. And thank you, counselors, for filtering a lot of those questions that were coming in that were sent to everyone. I do have a few that were sent to me privately, Griffin. If you are available. Okay, so one of the questions that came in was to wondering if there's any updates to their financial aid letter or anything any changes, how would they be notified that there will be a change?
yeah, really, really good question. So like I said, that first notice, you're going to get a physical notice and then also the digital notice. Any changes that we make to a student's financial aid notice and financial aid letter after that first one will just be digital. So you'll get an email. It'll have financial aid in the subject line. It'll be big and bolded, and then it'll say there's been an update to your award notification, and then you'll go in and have it. I always tell current students this, and actually it's good info for prospective students too. As much as I would like it to be the case, financial aid does not send emails for fun. So if you get an email that has financial aid in the subject line, usually it's going to be a notification of an updated award notice. So make sure you're checking that email and looking if any updates come through.
Okay, Griffin. So we have a family member who compares financial aid packages from like a previous child going through the process, and they noticed that some schools will offer different grants and things like that with the same, I guess, EFC back then, but now SAI. Do you have anything to mention about that on like why there would be a difference between different schools sending different grants on top of the merit award? I know it varies school to school, but any insight on that?
Yeah, really good question. And I know it can be really tricky too when we're looking at multiple institutions, just because things are really based and varied school to school. So for example, when we talk about things that are based on similar information, like say the Pacific grant versus another grant that a private school might have, those things are all calculated in-house. So are gonna vary in amounts across the board from school to school. One question that I know does come up is some schools will also offer different amounts in things with the same name, right? So whether that be the SEOG grant or whether that be federal work study. And in that instance, those things are still, they're technically federal, but they're based on campus funding. So that's why that will vary from school to school. So I know that that can get confusing too, right? Because some students will see, hey, why do I have $2,000 in work study eligibility here versus $4,000 in work study eligibility here? And those funds that are based campus to campus do vary. Really, if you're seeing any differences though in things that look like they should be comparable, I always again encourage students to reach out to me or your admissions counselor. Sometimes a thing gets missed, right? And we can do some more digging to see why something is the way it is. So definitely if there are questions as you're going through and comparing financial aid packages with similar information across the board, reach out to me, reach out to Stacy or your admissions counselor, and we can kind of get into the nitty-gritty of your specific scenario to break it down, just because it does vary so much.
Yeah, thank you, Griffin. I know that there can be a lot of confusion with what is labeled from different schools. So it's really helpful to say, hey, Griffin, what does this mean? And sometimes you'll see that some schools will have different requirements for that, or they may title it that it's an award, but there's also different things that you need to do to receive it. So really, really good question. Thank you for asking that. So Griffin, sometimes families will see a increase in direct costs from year to year. Anything that we can anticipate with Pacific?
Yeah, really good question. So as Pacific's policy currently stands, there are going to be slight bumps in tuition and direct costs year over year. The really nice thing about Pacific's current students is they have scholarships that are only available to them, right? So these are scholarships that are only available to our students who are going to be sophomores, juniors, seniors. And these scholarships are, thankfully, the amounts that they are in are enough to be a bump to help not only offset a potential increase in direct costs, but also enough to actually increase the amount of financial aid students get year over year. So I have students who come in with their financial aid package at Pacific, or at any school really, and I was guilty of this when I was a student, and thinking that it was said and done, right? That was the financial aid that you were stuck with, that you were going to get for all 4 years, and there was nothing else you could do to change that. And here at Pacific, we have scholarships that are only open to our current students. These are 1-year awards that typically range anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000 additional a year, but students can reapply to them every single year. So I have a senior this year who has gotten the same additional $5,000 scholarship every single year here at Pacific after their first year, because they've applied for it every single year. And they actually ended up getting more financial aid year over year during their entire time that they've been here at Pacific.
Yeah, thank you, Griffin. Thank you for that transparency and letting families know how it is. And thank you, counselors, for just quickly answering these questions when they come in. Really appreciate it.
I know they're
So
speedy.
I know they're so quick. I'm like about to ask the question and they're sending the information. So thank you, counselors, for that. So Griffin, when families are looking to submit these letters of just consideration for various situations in their family, is there a time frame that you would like it? Is there a length? Just kind of a little bit of framework on what they should be telling you folks and when.
Yeah. So as far as time frame, I mean, really, since our office is starting to build financial aid packages, I would like to get that info from folks as soon as possible. We are required by federal law where that first financial aid notice that we send includes the original information from the FAFSA. But if we have that information when we're sending those awards out, that means I have a stack right now. I've got a list of students to go back, take a look at after we send out that notice and start making those changes to information to see what additional aid consideration can come from that. So really, as early as possible at this point, reaching out to me and Stacy, we can send through any forms that we need you to fill out or any documents that we need. There is no deadline. I mean, these are changes that, and this is always helpful for students to know as well too. Like if there aren't any changes right now, but there is a change in November, we're still taking a look. We're still seeing what we can do to change, right? This can happen at any point throughout the academic year. There is no deadline to make sure that the financial aid that you receive is an accurate reflection of your scenario. So as soon as possible, all the way through to when you graduate, really is the the general timeline, I guess. One other thing too is like, as far as something actually written, please no more than a page. Like I am hesitant to put more on people's plates. I know you all have got a ton of stuff going on, both students and parents, right? So I'm hesitant to stretch folks' bandwidth beyond just a page, 2 pages at most of something written in an email format. And it doesn't have to be super formal, right? This can be essentially like we're having a conversation, right? Just a general casual email to Stacy and myself. And then we'll let you know what other info we need, if any.
Yeah, thank you, Griffin. I know, like, when families are going through the process, remember it is a process, right? Because right now you are waiting and anticipating financial aid letters, but that's why it's important students to start working on those outside scholarships. Many of them are closing on March 1st. A lot of them are, they have their own window because they have to distribute those award letters to students. So that's why the best time right now is to work on those outside scholarships because the deadline is coming close. And hopefully with timing, you can get the financial aid packages, right after those deadlines are completed. What we run into the problem is that many families or students will wait and then they get financial aid packages and then they're kind of nervously looking for scholarships and many of the deadlines have passed. So utilize this time now that your students, you've applied to hopefully all your schools, to now look at those outside scholarships where you can talk to with your college counselors or supporters at your high schools because they know a lot of regional opportunities that are with a smaller applicant pool that you might be more eligible for. So utilize that time right now to work on that along with the letter to Griffin if it applies to you. So Griffin, I have a parent whose child did not receive a lot of aid, and their financial situation hasn't changed. This is from a older child. What have you recommended for families when they're realizing they're stuck? There's no changes to their income or any other financial burdens, and a lot of the scholarships are going to be need-based. Any advice for these families?
Yeah, really good question. And I know it can be tricky too, just because I always call it like the kind of the FAFSA dead zone, right? Where you fall outside of eligibility for the federal Pell Grant. But then also like there aren't enough resources to pull from to make it through just based on that alone. And one thing that I really like about our approach here at Pacific, and depending on their experience in the past, is we have folks who fall outside of that grant eligibility through that FAFSA that still do qualify for additional eligibility for aid here at Pacific, right? So that does, of course, vary depending on that FAFSA information and SAI information. But we do have folks, I've had conversations with folks who have completed the FAFSA and we're like, we are certain we're not getting any federal grant aid, and they were correct. But then they were able to get some additional Pacific grant aid through us here on our end. So again, that's why I always encourage folks to wait until they do get that financial aid package, just to see what additional aid can come from that as well. And another reason that I always encourage folks, regardless of their situation, to still apply for that FAFSA, just because again, you don't know with what that information we can calculate here on our side. And then, in the instance where folks say potentially don't qualify for that, that is really again where that conversation with me and with Stacy come into play to have that conversation about what's realistic and what's doable for you all, and then also what are other resources, say if we're past scholarship deadlines, that we can pull in to have you and your students start looking at either for next year, or whether we're looking at additional loan options for this upcoming year that exist outside of those federal direct loan options as well. And then just kind of take that conversation from there.
Yeah, Griffin, that's so helpful because I know families are like, we want to make this work, but we're not receiving as much aid. And we want to say over and over, if we don't know, we can't help. So just kind of talking to us and us being able to pull our resources and our experience working with families over the years, we'd be happy to guide you through it. And whether that be working with your student for this upcoming fall to make it happen, or say, hey, you know what? Why don't you look at some other options, talk it over? We still have time. And some families have reached out to us in ending of July. We can make it work. It's going to happen. And we worked around the clock to make things happen within 24 hours for your child. So we want to make sure you have enough time to have this important conversation when it's around finances. And yeah, thank you, Griffin, for answering those questions. Counselors, any other ones that popped in that you want to mention to Griffin? I know you guys worked through the chat, but any ones that were privately sent? Oh, go ahead, Gracie.
Yeah, real quick, kind of what you were saying. Can students and families appeal a financial aid package if it's not sufficient?
Yeah. So short answer, yes, right? That is where I would encourage folks to, if there is still a gap that needs to be covered, to reach out to us, right? Pacific doesn't have a formal appeal process per se for letters, but that is kind of where we really like to start that conversation, just to see if there's anything that we can do, right? Or anything in your situation that either got missed before, or anything else that we can pull from, whether it's academically or anything else that a student is interested to see what other aid is out there, whether that be scholarship opportunities. And then again, like I said, just seeing what Stacy and I can do to whittle away at it, to get it to a point where it's doable and realistic, and ultimately at the end of the day, a good financial decision, right? That is Stacy and I's roles, is to help you all make financial decisions that make sense, and that at the end of 4 years are going to have a positive outcome.
So Griffin, a couple questions just popped in the chat. One asking about when we could possibly expect the financial aid package. Any thoughts?
Yeah, so
Or
right now,
ballpark?
kind of similar to what I've been saying to students for the past couple months, middle of this month is when folks can start getting those notifications. Our office is currently working through those. We've got a couple of them to build, but we are working through them quickly and as fast as we can, and expecting to get those notifications out to folks later on this month in February. So you'll have something in your hands here within the next coming weeks or so. So.
Griffin, is it safe to say that the financial aid, the notification is going to go to the student's email that we have on file through their application, not a Pacific email?
Yes, I believe it would actually be to the student's application email.
Yep. And then once the student deposits, they'll get that amazing Pacific email address that
Yeah,
will send
correct.
next step things. Yeah.
Yep.
And Griffin, I'm assuming the next question that came in was dealing with emergencies that will happen in the year. So if something just pops up and there's a circumstance that they need some emergency aid, how does your office work with students in those situations?
Yeah, really good question. So, stuff comes up all the time, and there are a couple different avenues. And actually, this is a good little plug. Pacific has a dedicated student emergency fund, and that is a fund that is typically open pretty much throughout the entire academic year to students who are running into issues that they're having. Whether it be, I had a student who had their car that had a window smashed, so they were able to get funds through their emergency fund to help cover any costs and repairs. And that is usually open pretty much throughout the entire academic year for students. If there's anything that falls outside of the scope of what the student emergency fund could cover, that's again where folks come and sit down with me, with Stacy. We can see what other funding's available. A lot of times, thankfully, those conversations, we sit down with students, they say what's going on, and then we say, oh, this sounds like something that would be a perfect fit to apply to the student emergency fund for. And thankfully, with those conversations, I'm on the committee that reviews those emergency funds, so I can bring in a lot of information from my meetings with students. Or if a student requires follow-up after we review that application, it's pretty easy to get connected and actually sit down with a student and have those conversations as well.
Thank you, Griffin. Yep. So one of the questions that was asked, yeah, so if your student has a scholarship after March 1st or after financial aid package was presented to you, we'll definitely update that information on their portal and make sure that's applied. And so if your student does get an outside scholarship, please notify us so we can make sure that it's uploaded and sent over to our offices so that we can update your cost of attendance and everything that you need. The question about what's happening currently in our government, Griffin. Some families might be worried if it's going to affect anything that you can foresee at this moment. I'm going to say no at this moment, but anything that you can chime in.
Yeah, no, you're correct. And I know that it is a time where there's a lot of uncertainty around that. And right now, we're finding information out here the same day that you all are, right? So I know that there have been some updates that came out last week in regards to federal spending that thankfully doesn't affect any federal aid programs that are through FAFSA. So that is all going to remain untouched. The FAFSA application exists in federal statute. In law, it will require an act of Congress to make any sort of changes to that information. So I know right now, there are a lot of proposals and things that are coming out that are uncertain, right? And can be scary. But know that right now, all this information, FAFSA application, the free application for federal student aid as a entity still is going to stand, right? And if there are going to be updates to that or updates that happen throughout the year, we're all gonna approach them together and find solutions, right? So yeah, nothing is impacted right now, and we're learning more as we go.
Yeah, thank you, Griffin. Yep, we'll just take things a day at a time and we'll work with you and your families through that process. Uncle Jeff, you had something to add?
Yeah, I think there was a question about scholarships. So keep in mind, folks, that the March 1 deadline for our scholarships, talent awards, music, theater, etc., PSIMs, computer science, that's not till March 1st. You could receive a financial aid award. And then if you are awarded one of those scholarships, you would receive an update of that additional funds being put into your financial aid award. So if you're applying for a creative writing scholarship and you get your award at the beginning of March 1st, as an example, and then because these folks are not making their decisions until after those scholarships close, you could get an updated award with that additional scholarship money. So always keep
Yes.
an eye on your email.
Yeah, thank you, Uncle Jeff. Yeah, definitely want to continue to check your email and be in communication with us. Yeah, so that's all the questions that we have at this moment. And remember, you can always reach out to Griffin and Stacy in financial aid. You can reach out to any one of us to kind of guide you through who to contact and answer some of those quick questions. But just want to really thank all of you for your time and for your importance on this important topic. And Griffin, I mean, I just feel better. I don't know anything with financial aid, but I feel like I do now that I've been here at this presentation. So thank you so much, Griffin. We really appreciate your care for all our families. Yeah.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
Griffin. Fantastic,
Thank
bud.
you. And we'll stick around for a few moments. Oh, yeah. But yeah, families, go ahead. I know it's a late evening for many of you, but we'll stick around for any other questions. Thank you, everyone. Have
Thanks
a
so
nice
much for coming,
evening.
everybody.
Thanks, guys. I have a question. I'm probably the only second year parent in here. I just want to
I was
see
like, I know that name.
I've seen you before.
No, I just wanted to also just make sure I'm not missing stuff because I feel lost in some of this world of college, and trying to parent from afar is very new. I am not good about checking my email and things, so I was just curious if there's any advice you could give a parent who's in the second year of your child, going through the financial aid process. You guys were so awesome to help us all the way through the start of the school year. Some of our aid didn't come till late, and thankful it did. But what kind of advice or tips you can give me or any other parent that may be a second year parent or third year parent that in the process, because it differs from when we first did it last year.
Yeah, the biggest piece would be bugging your student about scholarship applications for current students. I try to do as good of a job as I can, but I know that there's a certain level of bugging that a parent can hit that I never can with students. So definitely like just reminding students about those applications and really encouraging them, if they're not sure where to start, to come and see me. I'm happy to sit down with students and go through what's available. But thankfully we're at a point right now where there is still a ton of stuff that was open. Like I was saying, it's a bummer when these conversations sometimes happen later on in like April. My first question I always ask students is if they applied to those current student scholarships. Just because, like, anecdotally, since I've been here at Pacific, not enough of our current students apply to those. So the students that do have a really, really good shot of actually getting funding through those. One of those scholarships, the Box Your Spirit Award, we typically 150-ish students apply. And typically we offer like 140 of those scholarships. So if students put a moderate amount of effort into an essay, and actually write it, then they have a pretty good shot at getting some sort of scholarship. So
Okay. The FAFSA is the FAFSA that has to be done this year is the same as what we would do it last year. Like she and I both have to do it. Okay.
correct. Yep. Yeah.
The-
Yeah. The format is largely the same. The only difference being that it is working much better this year than it did last year. So
Okay. I'll get
Yeah.
on that. And then as far as the like how we got a letter last year, is hers just gonna all be digital because she's already a current student? She's just gonna
Yep.
get it.
Current students all digital, and it's going to be a little later this year than for prospective students. So we typically send those notifications out for current students towards the end of the semester, typically in late April to May.
Okay. And then her like the music scholarship that she had to do those ones they have to reapply every year, or is that something that when she did it that first year it's renewable for her full
It's going to renew as long as students are maintaining the criteria within the program, which typically the way that they're being advised by their advisors, they'll have no problem keeping eligibility year over year. But yeah, nope, no additional application. That's going to carry through with her for all 4 years. So.
Okay. I'll advise her to also come see you to make sure that any of the other stuff that we had already on there is being maintained, or that we, if we have to reapply for any of that we're taking care of that.
Yep.
Thank you guys.
Good to
So
see
nice
you.
to see you.
Oh, hi, Uncle Jeff.
Great seeing you.
Yes. Go watch my girl play this Saturday. It's her first game.
They're gonna be yeah, we're gonna be watching.
Are
Definitely.
you there? Are you there?
Hopefully it doesn't snow.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't snow. But
Yesterday.
we'll be watching games. Yeah.
He called me yesterday with to show me the snow. Said all the Hawaii kids were out in the yard. Yeah.
Well,
right,
we're
thank
happy that
you.
you joined us. Thank you. Give our
Thank
love to your
you.
family, okay?
Hey, good night.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Have a nice evening. Take care.
Great evening. Bye guys.
Hi, everyone. Thank you,
Paul.
Donna.
Thanks for
hosting.
coming, Randy. Thanks for coming, Paul.
Yeah, thanks
You're
for being
welcome,
here.
P. Hey, thank you to all of you for
Griffin, great job. Big mahalo, Donna.
Always.